शेषानः यदन्नेनातिरोहति एतावानस्य महिमा अधो जायागुश्च पूरुषः पादोऽस्य विश्वाभूतानि त्रिपादस्यामृतं दिवि त्रिपादूर्ध उदय पुरुषः पादोऽस्येह भवात् पुनः ततो विश्वं व्यक्रामद शासनानशने अभि तस्माद् विराड जायत विराजो अधिपूरुषः स जातो अत्यरिच्यत पश्चात् भूमिमतो पुरः यत्पुरुषेण हविषा देवा यज्ञमतन्वत वसन्तो अस्यासीदाज्यम् ग्रीष्म इद्म शरद्रविः सप्तास्यासन् परिदयः त्रिसप्तसमिधः कृताः देवा यज्ञं तन्वानाः अबध्नन् पुरुषं पशुं तैयज्ञं बर्हिषि प्रवक्षन्न पुरुषं जातमग्रतः तेन देवा अयजन्त साध्या ऋषयश्च ये तस्माद् यज्ञात् सर्वहुतः संवृतं पृषदाज्यं पशुगुष्टागुष्टक्रेवायव्यान आरण्यान् ग्राम्याश्च ये तस्माद् यज्ञात् सर्वहुतः ऋक्षः सामानि जग्निरे छन्दागुंसि जग्निरे तस्मात् यजुस्तस्मादजायत तस्मादश्वा अजायन्त ये केचोभयादतः गावो जग्निरे तस्मात् तस्मात् जाता अजावयः यत्पुरुषं व्यदधुः कटिदा व्यकल्पयन् मुखं किमस्य कौ बाहु काऊरुपादावुच्येते ब्राह्मणोऽस्य मुखमासीत् बाहुराजन्यकृतः ऊरु तदस्य यद्वैश्यः पद्भ्यागुं शूद्रो अजायत चन्द्रमा मनसो जातः चक्षो सूर्यो अजायत मुखादिन्द्रश्चाग्निश्च प्राणाद्वायुरजायत नाभ्या आसीदन्तरिक्षं शीर्ष्णोद्यौ समवर्तत पद्भ्यां भूमिर्दिशः श्रोत्रात् तथा लोकागम् अकल्पयन् वेदाहमेतं पुरुषं महान्तम् आदित्यवर्णं तमसस्तु पारे सर्वाणि रूपाणि विचित्य धीरः नामानि कृत्वा विवदन्यदास्ते दाता पुरस्ताद्यमुदा जहार शक्रप्रविद्वान् प्रदिशश्च तस्तः तमेवं विद्वान् अमृत इह भवति नान्यः पन्था अयनाय विद्यते यज्ञेन यज्ञमयजन्त देवाः तानि धर्माणि प्रथमान्यासन् ते हनाकं महिमानः सचन्ते यत्र पूर्वे साध्या सन्ति देवाः.
Sairam, once again, welcome back. During our last session, one of the attendees had asked the question about being a vegetarian and chanting the mantra, Vedams. Perhaps my response may have created a little bit of stir in some of you, or even fear. But I want to clarify what I said is that diet contributes to the impact of our chanting of the Vedic mantras or any spiritual sadhana for that matter. It is conducive, just as soil is conducive for the effective growth of the seed. If you provide the right type of soil, the seed will germinate and grow fully to its full potential. If you plant the seed in the wrong type of soil, it might germinate, might even grow, but will it bear fruit is the question. So therefore, my suggestion was that vegetarian diet is highly recommended during the Vedam chanting. Generally, in this day and age, it is highly recommended anyway. Now, more than that, another important aspect that we need to keep in mind is when we're learning to chant the Vedam, is the discipline, the commitment, the consistency that we need to maintain to get the full benefit. Remember, in anything, consistency, perseverance is the hinge of success. I have seen, in fact, when I conduct the Vedanta classes every week, every Tuesday, and of course, the discourses, series of discourses happens every now and then as much as possible. I've seen some of the students tend to take it lightly, meaning that they may not show the adequate commitment that is required to get the full benefit. Like some of them will attend 1 week and then next week again and won't see them for next 3-4 weeks. And suddenly they pitch up again a week, then don't see them. That irregular pattern of learning. So I've made a rule that if I see somebody consistently absent for 3 weeks, then we very politely request them that I think you may have to look elsewhere, because this class is for those who are committed, not for those who are interested. Everybody is interested. Who's not interested? When you're interested, you will attend whenever you like. When you're committed, you will attend whatever it takes. So that is what is required to learn the Vedam chanting. In fact, in the Bhagavad Gita, some of the important chapters, Bhagavan Krishna points out. I will bring some of these verses to your attention. Chapter 3, verses 31 and 32, he says, those men, women also included, those men who constantly practice this teaching of mine message of the Bhagavad Gita, full of Shraddha, faith, and without cavilling, they too are liberated from karma, actions. And then he says, but those who carp at this teaching of mine and do not practice it, deluded in all knowledge and senselessness, know them to be ruined, he says. And then again, there are many places, but some of the places where really come out strongly, that's all I'm drawing your attention to. Quite a few places he tells us, he says, to you who does not cavil, verily, cavil means taken lightly, I shall declare the greatest secret, knowledge together with wisdom, which having known, you shall be free from evil. Now, he uses positive word like Shraddha. Shraddha is commitment, consistency, perseverance, determination, your ability to follow through the practice till you master it. That is called Shraddha. Although Shraddha is generally, you'll find, loosely translated as faith, it is more than faith. Faith everybody has got. But Shraddha is what is required for you to be able to master the Vedam chanting and get the full benefit out of it. Otherwise, we are cavilling, we are taking it lightly. It's okay to miss one class and attend the two, three sessions later. It doesn't work like that. So you got to maintain that consistency. It's a commitment that you make to you. Remember, promise is what you make to the other people. Commitment is something that you make to yourself. So it's important for you to get the full benefit. You make a commitment to yourself so that you are able to maintain the, I can't say regularity, but consistency. I've heard people say that I'm learning Vedam very regularly. How often? Every 2 months. That's also regular, isn't it? But minimum is once a week. Ideally every day, but at least once a week. It is a commitment. And remember, when we talk about learning the Vedam chanting, we're talking probably an hour and a half maximum. And we still have rest of the 167 hours for our work or whatever that we need to do rest of the week. So I thought I'll just draw your attention to those two aspects because the question has brought it up. All right. So vegetarian diet is recommended. Coming back to the verses in the Purusha Suktam, in the 11th mantra, we studied until then the creation of the world and everything that is needed, the livelihood, the cow, goats, sheep, all those are created. And the exposition of these in the Purusha Suktam has been so systematic, so clear and scientific. Now we'll move on to the next mantra, that is mantra 12.
Yat purusham yadaduhu tathida vyakalpayan mukha kimasya kau bahu kavurupada uchchete. Yat purusham yadaduhu tathida vyakalpayan mukham kimasya kau bahu kavurupada uchchete.
As I concluded in our last class, having created the world, now on, Narayana Rishi is revealing to us how human beings are created. Now, some questions are raised here regarding the creation and creation of human beings itself. He says, Yat Purusham Vyadadhu. When Purusha was sacrificed, Yadadhu means sacrificed, Katidha Vyakalpayan, meaning what did Devas do with the limbs of Purusha? What are the forms in which they were created? And the question continues, Mukham Kimasya. What form did the face of Purusha take? Mukham means face. Purusha, the supreme reality. So what form the face of Purusha take? Kaubahu. What did Purusha's shoulders and arms take? Kaubahu. Kavuru. Who or what are his thighs become? I mean, we are imagining Purusha in the form of a human. So it's not meant to be taken literally, of course, but here it is, he's using as an analogy, as it were, in the creation of human being. So what are his thighs become? Pada vuchete. What are his feet become? In other words, now these questions are more representative questions, meaning what amount of thinking must have gone into creating this incredible mechanism, so to speak, called human being, you and me. Only Purusha could have done it. It's not only our human mechanism, even many things in the world, simple things like water. Remember, as I discussed the other day, you all know that nearly 70% or 68% of our body is water. And to create that element called water, H2O, what are the utilities of that element called water? You can drink it, you can bathe it, you can swim in it, you can ski on it, on snow, you can do ice skating, you can wash your hands. List goes on and on. Who else could have thought of that element called water but the Supreme Purusha? Similarly, this human personality itself, like one organ, heart or kidney, so valuable, which registers the quantity of sugar in the blood. If there is more sugar, if there is sugar level is more, it induces insulin. If it is less, it produces glucagon. I'm only talking about one. And remember, scientists, despite their incredible ingenuity, remember, they have been going through the research, thinking, etc., for centuries together. I'm talking about the modern scientists. They were not able to create a kidney, right? At least, I don't know. So the verse is talking about the power, the thinking goes into this creation of human being. Now, why we need to understand this? We don't seem to understand the value, the worth of human life. When we understand the worth of human life and the purpose of human life, we will begin to use our life for which it is meant for. That is to pursue the supreme and reach the culmination of our purpose, God realization. But at the moment, we are using it for everything else except that. I was reading in one of the articles a while ago about the brain power of human being. It says, and the author was comparing our brain to supercomputer, which makes about 400 million calculations per second. A supercomputer makes 400 million calculations per second. And if it does that for 100 long years at the rate of 400 million calculations per second, it cannot match what our brain does in 1 minute. We are talking about supercomputer. If it does that activity for 100 long years, it cannot match what our brain does in 1 minute. When we look at somebody and recognize that person, that happens in a matter of fraction of a second. Just the fact that you recognize that person, he is Raku or whoever it is. In that fraction of a second, millions of calculations are taking place in our brain. So who else could have thought about such a fantastic equipment? So that is the question here. So yet purusham vyadadhu, when Purusha was sacrificed, katidha vyakalpayan, what did Devas do with the limbs of Purusha? So from here on, the explanation of the creation of the world is over. From now on, he's talking about the creation of human being itself. So we'll continue with the mantra 13.
Brahmanosya mukhamasīt bahurajanyah kritah purudadasya yadvaishyah padyagum shudro ajayata. Brahmanosya mukhamasīt bahurajanyah kritah purudadasya yadvaishyah padyagum shudro ajayata.
In response to those questions in the previous verse, he says, Brahmanosya mukhamasid. His face became Brahmana. Face should encompass the head also. We'll explain what that means. Bahuhu Rajanya Kritaha. His hands or shoulders became Kshatriya. Uru Tadasya Yadvaisya. His thighs became Vaishya. His thighs became Vaishya. And then Padbhyagum Shudro Achayata. His feet became Shudra. In the creation of human beings, he says, there are 4 types of human beings created. And what are the 4 types of human beings? Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. You won't find many Shruti enlisting the 4 types of people, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Yes, of course, Smriti there is, like Bhagavad Gita and many other literatures. Shruti is what is heard. What we are studying is Shruti. The Shruti was, as I discussed right in the beginning, it was revealed in the mind of Narayana Rishi. Smriti is subsequent commentaries that is written by people. So the 4 types of human being, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. The 4 castes, as it were. In fact, in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, verse 13 discusses these four castes also. 4th chapter, verse 13. Now, these four divisions or the caste were based on gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. And these four castes are called varna. Now, these four varnas, they were not man-made. It was already there. They only explained it. That's all. So, what is guna? What is varna? And karma? Based on their guna and varna, there was karma, meaning their duties were recommended. So, this division of caste is a universal phenomena. It is not unique to India alone. But the Hindu sages and saints very clearly analyze the reason, the purpose, and the benefit of it. Now, he says, his head or face is Brahmana, hands and shoulders became Kshatriya, the thighs became Vaishya, and feet is Shudra. Simply put, Brahmanas and Kshatriyas and Vaishyas and Shudras are not only in the external world among the people, within each one of us. Our whole body itself can be divided into that four category. Head is what? Look, okay, let's understand this Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. All right. Brahmanas are the priest class because their temperament were most suited for that job. So they were recommended the duty of preaching based on their temperament. Why the temperament was most suitable, we'll analyze right now. And then Kshatriyas, predominantly Rajasic. And their temperament was most suitable for that. So also Vaishyas. So these divisions were based on gunas. Now, let us analyze the gunas, the sattva, rajas, and tamas. One of the brilliant contributions of Vedanta, among many, one of them is the analysis of human constitution based on the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. What is sattva? Sattva is a mental temperament, a thought texture, the structure of the thoughts, the nature of the thoughts. That temperament is called sattva temperament. So a sattvic person, a person with sattva temperament, the mind is generally very calm and composed. The intellect, the thinking as a result is very alert, thinker. Such people who's got a calm temperament, at the same time very contemplative mindset, are called Brahmanas because they are predominantly sattvic, sattva temperament, and little of rajas and traces of tamas. Now, what is rajas? Rajas is a state of mind when the mind is full of desires, greed, overcome with a lot of emotions like greed, anger, restlessness. Rajasic people are fidgety, restless. They are not contemplative generally. You find they become they yield to their temptations and desires. And they're more prone to activity. They have vigor, vitality. They can act. They are called Rajasic people. Tamas is the mental temperament when the mind is steeped in laziness, lethargy, inertia, inactivity, indolent. There's no motivation, there's no enthusiasm. Such temperament is called tamas. I'm sure most of you out there are familiar with this temperament. If somebody is not familiar, that's the reason I'm analyzing, or probably to refresh your memory. Sattva temperament, the sattvic people are calm, they're contemplative, they can think. Rajasic people are more prone to activity, they're restless. Tamasic people, on the other hand, are prone to laziness, lethargy. They don't have the ability to think. And not only that, these temperament manifest during the day in different times. That's the beauty of it. In each one of us, the sattva temperament manifests during the early hours of the morning, 4 to 6, Brahma Muhurtam. The most auspicious time, the holy hour, the most dynamic time, that is the time your mind is calm, your intellect is clear. So the best time to chant the mantram, Vedam chantings, are in the morning hours. The time to meditate, effective, even to study, whether it is spiritual study or your other secular studies. Because morning hours, sattva temperament is predominant. As a result, your medha shakti, your memory power and absorption ability. Remember, medha suktam. I'm sure all of us have learned it, you all particularly. Medha means memory power, absorption ability. Is optimum in the morning hours. That is about 4 to 6, 2 hours. And from about 6 a.m. to about 6 p.m., it is Rajas begin to manifest. Midday is the peak of Rajas. We are more prone to activity, a lot of emotion, activity, those things. And as the sun sets, Rajas temperament slowly dies down, falls back, tamas begin to take over. That's why after sunset, there's not much enthusiasm, motivation. Most people sit on the sofa and watch soapies. Not only because you're tired after working during the whole day, but even on a holidays. Or not only the lethargy, laziness, all those lazy, lethargic, indulgent tendencies manifest after sunset, like drinking, drugging, gambling, lust. Those tendencies manifest after sunset. That's why, the Puranas stories, a lot of stories relating to Rakshasas appearing in the night. Now, what does it mean, Rakshasas appearing in the night? Rakshasas appearing within our own mind, demonic tendencies, Rakshasic tendencies manifest in our mind after sunset. That is why it is not recommended to keep awake beyond 9 o'clock. 9, stretching up to 10 o'clock, we need to fall off to sleep and wake up at 4 o'clock. But today, unfortunately, for many people, I would say most people, the life pattern has changed. They sleep very late and wake up late. And we wonder why people's sattva guna is deteriorating, because we change our life pattern. So there is a need to change our lifestyle such a way that we sleep early. If you don't, you are encouraging tamoguna, tamas. That's not what we want. Those students who are studying, the best time to practice or any studies is in the early morning. What takes 5 hours in the evening, you can achieve probably in 1 hour because your absorption ability is at optimum. So those are the gunas. Based on the gunas, the 4 varna, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, 4 caste. So the Brahmanas were predominantly sattvic people, little bit of rajas and traces of tamas. Those were the Brahmin. And because their temperament is such that they were most suitable for preaching. So they took up, or they were recommended, the duties of imparting the spiritual knowledge. They were custodians of culture, brain trust. They were given the duty of preaching. And of course, they were recommended to eat sattvic food. Sattvic food that are not spicy, less salt, not very hot heat, in the sense of some people love to eat excessively hot food. Of course, vegetarian it has to be, no doubt. So when they eat sattvic food, their temperament remains sattvic, that facilitate their duty as preaching. And Bhagavad Gita defines who is a Brahmin. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmanega Vihastini. A Brahmin is one who is endowed with Vidya, knowledge, and Vinaya, humility, Sampanna, meaning wealth, wealth of knowledge and humility. But today, many Brahmins are very arrogant about their lineage, that I am Brahmin. Far from a Brahmin. They are below Brahmin. Brahmin are endowed with the Vidya, knowledge. At the same time, they have a deep sense of humility. Remember, your knowledge is characterized by humility. Vidya Vinayena Shobhade, meaning Vidya is expressed through humility. That is the characteristic of a Brahmin. But today, a lot of Brahmins in Hinduism, in India, get into a sense of arrogance. They develop a superiority complex. That we born into Brahmin caste, a Brahmin family. No, true Brahmin. They recognize their lineage as a Brahmin, but at the same time, they are imbued with a great sense of humility. Vidya and Vinaya. And you find some of the great contributors of knowledge, like I mentioned to you one of the sessions. Caliber of Einsteins and Edisons, and as recent as Dr. Abdul Kalam, our former president, late Dr. Abdul Kalam. Life is characterized by deep sense of humility and simplicity. So you do not have to be born a Brahmin to be a Brahmin? No. You could be born to Brahmin parents, but you may not be having the Brahmic temperament. On the other hand, a person could be born into a Kshatriya or even a Vaishya, but Brahminic temperament. So what we need to understand, it is a Brahmin is not assessed by birth but by quality. Not just the lineage. Yes, if you're born into the Brahmin family, it's fantastic. It will contribute to your maintaining your Brahminic tendencies. Now, what we need to understand, sisters and brothers, is that these division of caste, Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, were well meant, one of the ingenious division, but the later administrators of this great analysis began to assume a superiority and begin to create a division and discrimination between Brahmin, Kshatriya, and the other two varnas. And they destroyed the well-meant plan. So, Brahmin, understand this very carefully. You could be born into a Iyengar, Iyer, or Nambudiri, or Pandey, Maharaj. You know, in North India and South India, these are some of the surnames, like Chadurvedi, Dvivedi. Chadurvedi means one who has learned 4 Vedas. Dvivedi, one who's learned 2 Vedas. There are so many Brahmin surnames. Fantastic. But the surname means nothing if you don't have the temperament. So, you could be born into the Brahmin family, but the true analysis is done based on your temperament. And Kshatriyas are predominantly, mostly Rajasic, little of Sattva and Tamas. Predominantly Rajasic and little of Sattva and Tamas. They were very valorous. They were courageous. They could wield weapons. They were recommended the duty of protecting the country. Kshatriyas. They were rulers. And then Vaishyas. Vaishyas are less of Sattva and Rajas, more of Tamas. And in that temperament, Vaishyas had the mercenary attitude, profit-seeking attitude. They always think in terms of what's in it for me, what's the profit. In fact, if a Brahmin does a business, he will not be able to write an invoice and insist on payment. I know some of the people that I know, businessmen, and they send an invoice. If they don't get the payment, they're okay. But Vaishyas not like that. They make sure that before they dispatch their goods, part payment is done, 50%. Because that is their attitude, mercenary attitude. So what's in it for me? What's a profit? So they always think in terms of profit. So they were recommended a duty of commerce, business, traders, shopkeepers. Because that was the temperament that is more suitable. Remember, don't forget the ultimate purpose of God realization. I'll come back to it. And then Shudras. Shudras were predominantly tamasic, little bit of Rajas and traces of Sattva. Predominantly tamasic, little bit of Rajas and traces of Sattva. And they did not have the skill to do any one of the other 3. So they were recommended the duty of manual labor, even menial labor. And doing those duties according to their temperament, they also reduce their desires and vasanas and karma and reach God realization. Remember, it is not that Brahmins alone reach God realization, not at all. Even if you are a Shudra, in fact, in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, you could be a lowborn, you could be a Shudra, you could have done some atrocious activities in the past, but if you are acting with the right temperament, with the goal in mind, goal of God realization, even Shudras can reach the ultimate. So the purpose was two things. Number one, Brahmins were given the duty of preaching to protect the spirituality in the community. And they were separated, inverted comma, and they were recommended marry among Brahmins only. So also Kshatriyas. So that the offsprings will be Brahmins. So that the Brahmin, what you call this lineage or pedigree, to use a word, can be maintained. So the intercaste marriage were not recommended. There was no hard and fast rule, so that Brahmins reproduce Brahmins, and they provide the Brahminical environment for the offspring to grow. That was the beautiful well-meant system originally, but the later administered, misunderstood and confused it and made a mess of it. They brought about discrimination. There was no law prohibiting anybody to do any job. So he's talking about the four types of people, how Purusha created or manifested as these four types of beings. And then he says, in fact, if you analyze India particularly, ancient times, let's say Satyuga, Brahmins ruled the country. There was peace, there was prosperity, everything. And then probably centuries, or it could be millenniums later, Kshatriyas ruled. They were the rulers. And it is deteriorated further. Who rules the world today? Vaishyas. Capitalists are ruling the world. It's all about money. And if this deterioration continues, a time will come, it won't be Vaishyas, Shudras will be ruling the world. People without thinking. So as these quality of people ruling the world reduces, look what happens in the world. Happiness, challenges, happiness reduces, challenges increases, all kinds of problems. So what we need to understand is that this caste division was an ingenious design in the society, but it is the administrators did not understand the well-meant plan, especially Brahmins in India. They begin to assume a superiority. The moment we assume a superiority, that aspect of humility disappears. Remember, your ability and humility must always go hand in hand. Your knowledge and ability must always be preserved in a sense of humility. Einstein, when he became a celebrity scientist, he was waiting in the bus station, waiting in a queue to catch a bus. And right in front of him, there was another gentleman waiting. And he was holding a book, reasonably thick book on physics. And as he was holding the book on his shoulder like this, Einstein saw physics written on the book. And he was curious, who's the author, seeing the thick book and what the book is all about. So he asked the person in front, "Excuse me, sir." And the person turned. "Is that a book on physics?" Then the man in front said, "Yes." This is a book on physics. I'm a doctor of physics, said the man in front. Einstein said, oh, pleased to meet you, sir. I'm also a student of physics. Look at the reaction. Einstein said, I am a student of physics. When he became such a great scientist, having discovered the theory of relativity, etc., he get invitation from all over the world, all of many reputed Ivy League universities to speak on, etc. That is humility. We need to introspect. When we learn more and more knowledge, when we gain more and more ability, are we also developing humility? Today's education, unfortunately, does not provide the humility. In fact, many children, when they get education, academic qualification from some of the reputed universities, etc., they tend to disregard, they tend to look down upon the parents and say, oh, you're from villages. You're born in village in India. You don't know what you're talking about. We are born in America. We are born in Sydney. We are born in New York. Yeah. Humility. They tend to forget the sacrifices the parents have made to get them where they are. That is a Brahmin. Knowledge and humility. So head becomes a Brahmin. Now, if you analyze what the mantra is saying, is that you have all these 4 qualities in you. All of us perform these 4 duties every day. When you are guiding your family or giving a suggestion, giving an advice to your children, you're playing the role of a Brahmin. And then you could be working for the security of the family. Everybody's security, both wife and husband, everybody work in terms of making sure that the family is secure in every sense. You're being a Kshatriya. And then you plan the finances, make sure that financially your future is secure. You're being a Vaishya. And then in America, you have to do everything yourself, household work, whether it is sweeping, cleaning the gutter, doing the garden, generally. You're being a Shudra. So all of us do all this every day. So that is the implication here. He says, Mukham, Brahmanosya Mukham Asid. His face became Brahmana, the head. That is our thinking tool, isn't it? It is like the computer. If you compare our human system to a building, our head is the computer system. And then our torso is the air condition, ventilation system. And then below the torso is a drainage system. And the driveway is the limbs, leg. So, Bahu Rajanya Kritaha. Shoulders became Kshatriya, shoulders. This is the active part of the body. Thigh, Uru Tadasya Yadvaishya. Thighs became Vaishya, Yad Vaishya. Padbhyagum Shudro Ajayadaha. His feet became Shudra. So 4 aspects of our personality. So what we need to remember is this. Nobody in the society is superior or inferior. Just because we are Brahmin and the priest class doesn't mean that we have. Remember, the whole world is so beautifully created. Nobody is superior or inferior, or every person is as important or unimportant as the most important person or most unimportant person. The moment we assume a superiority because of your specific field of activity, that very moment we degrade ourselves. When you assume a superiority, remember, to superiority and inferiority is a two sides of the same coin. When you assume a superiority, automatically you would assume an inferiority also along with it. Two sides of the coin. Complex, superiority complex. You know, when you suffer from superiority complex because of these caste one belongs to, Brahmana, we tend to look down, we tend to criticize the other people. Superiority complex. So those people who suffer from the superiority complex, they always criticize people. And what do those people who suffer from the inferiority complex do? They also do something very similar. They gossip. So those people suffer from superiority complex, they criticize, they always find fault with the other people. And those people who suffer from inferiority complex, they gossip behind their back. Both this criticism and gossip is a huge impediment for human relationship. Many of our relationship challenges within the family, within the society, or across the countries, it's all because of the superiority complex. Now China wanted to be the big brother for the world. America has already assumed a big brother attitude, superiority. But there is no need. The whole universe is so beautifully and wisely designed that everybody have a role to play. Now that is what we need to understand here. When Purusha is sacrificed, does it mean that mankind is created from Purusha? Yes, that's what it means. You know, when we studied the Yajna earlier, remember to have brought your attention to the 10th verse of the chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita, where Bhagavan Krishna, Purusha himself, avatar, said, when Prajapati, the creator, created mankind with Yajna, right? So, you know, what we need to understand is that the whole expression is nothing but the manifestation of Purusha. Mantra 14.
चन्द्रमा मनसो जातः चक्षो सूर्यो अजायत मुखादिन्द्रश्चाग्निश्च प्राणाद्वायुरजायत चन्द्रमा मनसो जातः चक्षो सूर्यो अजायत मुखादिन्द्रश्चाग्निश्च
Another fascinating, in the mantra, in the process of explaining the creation of human being, now, you know, from mantra 13 onwards, next couple of mantras, he's basically discussing how the entire human dynamics takes place. Having created this, you know, but unfortunately it is so concealed. That is the style of the Vedic mantra. They did not explain. You know, ancient times when highly elevated young lads wanted to seek God, the ultimate reality, having tried everything that they did, tried to seek, experience Godhood, they missed the last experience of Godhood. And they sought a spiritual master in the deep recesses of the Himalayan jungle and basking in God consciousness. And that highly elevated, inspired lad asks this question: where is God? Who's God? What is God? What is my purpose? Who am I? The master asked the disciple, said, stay with me for 1 year. and asked me this question again after 1 year. Exactly after 1 year, when there was no calendar or other devices to count the days and weeks and months, exactly after 1 year, this inspired spiritual seeker asked the question, where is God? What is the truth? What is supreme reality? Who am I? What's my purpose? The master said, Tat Tvam Asi, that thou art, you are that. Education began and ended there. So this seeker had to go back to the banks of the Ganges and contemplate upon it and derive the meaning. Tat Tvam Asi, what is that? You are that. Having contemplated maybe several weeks, went back to the master, and is this the truth? Is this the reality? The master only said, Neti, Neti, not that. That was the way it was explained. No explanation, just a declaration. That is the style here. So Purusha Suktam simply declare. So our job here is to unpack what he is talking. So, and that is the Vedam, the Upanishads, etc., like the Purusha Suktam. And when you come to the Bhagavad Gita, there is more explanation. The entire Bhagavad Gita is packed in Purusha Suktam, the 18 mantras that we study. Bhagavad Gita is explained. And then even Bhagavad Gita became not easy for us to relate to. It's all Greek and Latin, we can't understand. So in order to bridge the gap, great sages, Mahatmas like Shankaracharya, Madhavacharya, Ramanujacharya, and scores of great sages and saints brought their explanation in specifically Shankara Bhashya, Shankaracharya's commentary, explains in much greater detail. And the same Shankaracharya's commentary, Shankaracharya's composition, if you see the modern gurus and Mahatmas written commentary, it goes into volumes, much explanation. So therefore, what is discussed, we are trying to unpack. He says, Chandrama manaso jataha. Chandrama manaso jataha. Chaksho, that means the Purusha's mind became moon. And then he says, Chaksho Suryo Ajayata. His eyes became the sun. And then he says, Mughadindrascha Agnischa. From his face came Indra and Agni, Indra and fire god. And he says, Pranat Vayu Ajayata. From Prana, Vayu emerged. As a Vedanta philosopher, the entire human dynamics is packed in these verses. Now, what is he saying? His mind became, Purusha's mind became the moon. Remember, let's understand this first. Human mechanism. We have the physical body. Beyond the physical body, we have the mind, intellect, and the ego. And then within the physical body itself, we have the pranas. The pranas are 5 in number. All right? Prana, Apana, Samana, Udana, and Vyana. I'll explain what they are. And then, of course, the 5 sense organs of perception and sense organs of action. So at the outset, you have the body, which contains 5 organs of perceptions called Jnanendriyas and 5 organs of actions called Karmendriyas. And that is supported by the pranas. They are the involuntary functions. What is prana? Pranas are the involuntary functions. You have voluntary functions and involuntary functions. Voluntary functions are performed with your 5 organs of perceptions and actions. Involuntary functions are those happens involuntarily. You have no conscious control over it. It happens, whether you like it or not. For example, your digestion, circulation, and many other internal functions. You don't have a control over it. The functioning of the heart. I mentioned the ingenuity of this creation of this human mechanism. Do you realize that? Some of the most, or I would not some of them, all the vital functions, one malfunction of which even in 30 seconds will end your life, right? Those vital functions, you cannot control it. He controls it. Who controls it? Purusha. He kept the direct control. He didn't give you the control, remember? Whereas the voluntary function you can control. What is voluntary function? Movement of my hands. I have choice. My eyes, I can close, open when I want. I can block my nose. The only thing I always wonder, God has given us, Purusha has given us the eyelid. Why didn't he give us the earlid? If only he also had given us earlid, a lot of problem would have been solved, because many domestic conflict would have been avoided if there was a earlid. Because when one spouse is screaming at the other, if you can block the ear with the lid, no problem, you can avoid. But he didn't give us that. I'm still trying to fathom why God Purusha did not give the earlid. He gave us the eyelid, so you can block your eyes. So the point is that voluntary functions you have direct control over. You can choose. Involuntary functions you cannot choose. Supposing you forget, functioning of the heart continuously from the time even before you're born till you die. It goes on. Incredible tool. As I mentioned the other day, even if you place it outside the body, still functions. Digestion. You have your breakfast, all right, and you don't have time to digest it. I will digest my breakfast for lunch. Can you do that? No. As soon as you swallow the food, digestion process, the digestive juices are produced, the acids and all those kind of things, and digestion starts. You don't know it. Blood circulation and many other involuntary functions, vital functions, he controls it. Purusha, Supreme Purusha controls it. He did not give us that control because he knows that we'll make a mess of it. Look what we have done with the organs that he gave us control, with the eyes, with the 5 organs of perceptions and 5 organs of action. We go all out indulging in the world with the worldly pleasure, and we create problem. We make a mess of it. So the voluntary function, involuntary function, all are covered. Now he says, Chandrama Manaso Jataha. The Purusha's mind became the moon, meaning the moon is the presiding deity of the mind. Moon has connection over our mind. We all know that. It is proven. Isn't it? There is an impact of the moon, especially full moon. That is where the tide, the highest tide is full moon night in ocean. And we are 68% water. So the movement of the moon has got an impact on our body and the mind. That's why somebody's gone mad. We call them lunatic. Send them to asylum. So what does the mind contain? Let's analyze. Moon. Mind contains desires, emotions, likes and dislikes, impulses, attachments, feelings. These are all various components of the mind. desire for name, fame, power, position, status, food, clothing, money, family. These are all various desires. Then you have emotions. Emotions are two types: good emotions and bad emotion. Good emotions like love, kindness, compassion, charitable disposition, and negative emotions like anger, greed, jealousy, vanity, pride. These are all the negative emotions. And then likes and dislikes. What is likes and dislikes? Certain things that you like, certain things that you dislike. Unfortunately, the system is such that what you like is not necessarily what is good for you, and what is actually good for you, you don't like it. Very strange. If what you like is actually good for you and what you don't like is actually bad for you, if that is the case, we will not have problem. We will not fall sick. You know, a lot of our illness comes because of the kind of food that we eat. Our food, our tongue determines the type of food that we eat rather than the intellect. So likes and dislikes, what you like and what you dislike, and certain belief systems, memories, feelings like joy and sorrow, they're all the contents of the mind. So moon is the presiding deity of the mind. And then he says, Chaksho Surya Ajayata. Chaksho Suryo Ajayata. His eye became the sun. Sun is the presiding deity of the intellect, manas and buddhi. Dil and dimag, heart and the head. So when he says his eyes became the sun, the eyes that is referring to is not the physical eyes. He's referring to the eye of wisdom, which is called Jnana Chakshu. The eye of wisdom is located in your buddhi, in the intellect. Using the Jnana Chakshu, the eye of wisdom, you can foresee the consequences, maybe 50 or 100 years later. And Jnana Chakshu, that is why you must, I'm sure you've seen the image of Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva has got third eye on his forehead, that is referred to as the Jnana Chakshu, the eye of wisdom. So sun is the presiding deity of the buddhi, the intellect. So what is Jnana Chakshu? The eye of wisdom is, it is that extra eye, you can call it intuition as opposed to tuition. Tuition is what you learn from outside. Intuition is what springs from your Jnana Chakshu. Sight is what you see with your eyes. Insight is what you see with your Jnana Chakshu. Knowledge is what you gain from your books. Wisdom is what you have digested out of the knowledge. So, when you sincerely, devoutly, diligently, consistently absorb the knowledge of Purusha Suktam, you've heard, that is called Shravana. And then you go through manana, reflection, contemplation of these literatures. You ask the question, why? What is it? How is it? I discussed with you the 7 questions, tried and true. What, why, when, where, who, why, and how. The 5 questions are the informatory question: what, when, where, who, how, why, what, when, where, who, which. They give you information. And then you ask why, how. That is analytical question. So when that is what applying those questions to this information is called manana, reflection. So when you reflect upon it, the wisdom get crystallized in our mind, in our buddhi. And when the wisdom get crystallized, that is when you develop jnana chakshu, the eye of wisdom. So in any field, I'm specifically speaking about in the spiritual field, but you can have jnana chakshu in any field. An experienced advocate who dealt with many high profile cases, very complex cases, represented and won. And genuinely, there are many advocates who only take law that is morally right. He doesn't try to win the case for the client just because trying to be legally right. They are the people with insight. I was reading a little article, somebody, I forgot the lawyer's name, who represented Rama Janmabhoomi case, the advocate, a very senior advocate who's 92 years old. If somebody remember, can drop the name on the message box. That is insight. Sight, you can get through books. Insight comes through jnana chakshu. An engineer with many decades of experience gains that insight because they went through very complex situations and they gain the insight. Similarly, that is what he's referring to. And then he says, Mughadi Indrascha Agnischa. From his face came Indra and Agni. What is Indra and Agni? Yes, here you go. Thank you, Anandini. Dr. Parasharan, advocate who represented the case. You know, when you look at the great man, there is tejas on his face. Tejas means that aura, that wisdom. That happens when you have that that aura. That happens through real noble intention, no selfishness, or less selfish, less ego. That is when the tejas comes. So from his face came Indra and Agni. Now, Indra and Agni represents the organs of perception and organs of action. 5 organs of perception is represented by Indra, and Agni represents the organs of action. Why? Because we often say fiery speech. Speech is one of the 5 organs of action. The subtlest of the 5 is the speech. Hands, legs, organ of speech, genitals, and organs of evacuation. Those are the 5 organs of action called karmendriyas. All right. So the jnanendriyas and karmendriyas, and each of these 5 organs of perceptions have their own presiding deity, which will be discussed in the next verse, of course, next mantra. So here he's referring to the 5 organs of perceptions and the 5 organs of actions. And then he says, Pranad Vayur Ajayata. From his breath came the Lord of Wind, referring to the Pranamaya Kosha, or the entire prana. Now, let us understand the 5 organs of perceptions, Indra, and the 5 organs of actions, and what do they do in our life. In order to explain that, let me draw your attention to a slide on your screen. All right. All right. You can see on your screen, the world outside offers 5 stimuli. They are color and form for the eyes, sound for the ears, smell for the nose, taste for the tongue, and touch for the skin. These are the 5 stimuli that the world offers. All right. I'm assuming you are able to see. Please message me. All right. Thank you. So the world offered the 5 stimuli. All right. The 5 stimuli are these. And when the world offers the 5 stimuli, the stimuli reaches the 5 organs of perception: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and the skin. All right. So when, let's say, I'm speaking to you, all right, when I'm speaking to you, when my voice reaches your ear, what happens? I'm sure you must have answered as you hear. You don't. When my voice reaches your ear, you don't hear. When my voice reaches your ear, the job of the ear is to send the stimuli to the mind. That is, the mind has got its own, it's their corresponding sense center. You have the 5 organs of perception, and in the mind you have 5 corresponding sense centers. So the ear send the signal to the sense center in the mind. Only then your perception is registered. It's possible, supposing you're so preoccupied with something, I don't know what it is. Your mind is so preoccupied with something that is worrying you. Although my voice is reaching your ear, since your mind is preoccupied, you still can't hear. It's possible. Why? Because the sense centers are not registering. All right. So having received the stimuli, all right, it reacts with your mind, intellect, and the ego, and it responds back to the world through 5 organs of actions called karmendriyas: hands, legs, genital, organ of speech, and organs of excretion. That is what he's talking about when he says Indra and Agni. He's only talking about these 2. Now we need to think and derive out of it. So world offer the stimuli, that is, you got to remember 3 letters: R, R, R. They are receipt of the stimuli through the organs of perception, reaction within the mind, intellect, and ego, the second R, receipt, reaction, and the third R is response back to the world through organs of action. And response will depend upon the type of mind, intellect, and ego you have. Now what happens is, because we have not strengthened our intellect, most of us react with emotions. This is what is reaction. Ideally, instead of reacting with emotions, we need to respond with emotion, with the intellect. All right. Now, if you look at the image there, again, the world offered the same 5 stimuli. It reaches the mind with full of desires. When the mind receives the stimuli, it must consult the intellect, the thinking faculty. And the intellect must decide what kind of response to be given. That is the way ideally. All right. But what happens to most of us is that we react with emotion. As you can see in this image, the mind itself reacts. In this image, it is response originating from the intellect. That is called rational response. This one is called emotional reaction. So are you performing emotional reaction or rational response? Simply put, are you reacting with emotions or responding with reason? Those people who are successful and happy, they respond with reason. Rest, react with emotions. That is the role of these 5 organs of perceptions and 5 organs of action and the mind and intellect. So this 14th mantra covers The 5 organs of perception that you can see, the 5 organs of actions you can see, manas, that is the mind, the moon is the presiding deity of the mind, sun is the presiding deity of the intellect. Now, that's not all. For the senses, just because you have the eyes, you can't really see it. Just because you have the nose, you can't smell it. Just because you have tongue, you can't taste it. And there are the other 2 senses. All right. Just because you have a sound ear, you can't hear it. Just because you have healthy skin, you cannot feel the sensation of touch. You need a presiding deity, the mediator for those sense organs. So what are the mediator or the presiding deities for those for those 5 sense organs? That is the subject matter in the discussion in the next mantra that we'll be discussing tomorrow. Right? So in the meantime, reflect upon these ideas, contemplate upon it, and if there's any questions, we can take up tomorrow. As you know, tomorrow is our final session on the Purusha Suktam. So I will see you tomorrow at 3:30, same place at the same time. So that'll be, 9:30 for you, of course. All right. And Sairam, and yeah, that's about it. I'm just looking at any questions. All right. We'll conclude with Chama Prarthana.
Om Yadakshara Padaphrashtam Matrahinam Tu Yad Bhavet Tatsarvam Shamyatam Deva Narayana Namostute Visarga Bindu Matrani Padapadaksharani Cha Nyunani Chatirikhtani Kshamasva Saishvara Aparada Sahasrani Kriyante Haranishambhaya Daso Yamiti Mammatva Kshamasva Saishvara Anyata Sharanam Nasti Tvameva Sharanam Mama तस्मात् कारुण्य भावेन रक्ष रक्ष साईश्वर हरि ओम तत्सत् श्री साईश्वरार्पणमस्तु ओम शांति शांति शांति.
All right, I'll keep a few minutes extra tomorrow for you to pause if you have any questions. Thank you very much. Is there any? Okay.